Officials make a climate change declaration.
The Attorney General speaks on draft legislation that talks about mandatory evacuation.
Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Vwani Tood. Topping news tonight, Minister of Environment Ramon Ferreira today made a climate crisis declaration as he and local environmentalists asserted climate change is to blame for superstorms like Dorian. The Category 5 hurricane killed at least 52 people in the Bahamas, is responsible for as many as 1,300 missing people and caused billions of dollars in damage. Jasmine Brown reports.
Minister Ferreira giving that climate change declaration at his ministry this morning as he says given Dorian's destruction, it's clear something has to be done now.
We acknowledge that we are in a national climate crisis and the country is facing a national climate emergency. And we are committed to doing all that needs to be done to alleviate and remediate the effects of climate change.
Hurricane Dorian destroyed several communities and entire settlements after slowly making its way across Abaco and Grand Bahama as a Category 5 storm. Dorian has gone on record as one of the strongest storms in the Atlantic Basin. Climate change has been blamed globally for the increase in wild weather, and the Environment Minister says that's clear. The declaration, which is based on the tenets of the Cat Island Conservation Institute's Climate Crisis Plan, seeks to address those concerns. It states the Bahamas is facing an impending and existential threat due to climate change. Climate change is a real and urgent crisis driven by human activity. Climate change significantly impacts small island developing states and low-lying coastal communities like the Bahamas, rendering them vulnerable. And Category 5 hurricanes like Dorian are projected to be an unwelcome future norm. CCI founder and executive director Nikita Shiel-Roll stressed the dire position of the Bahamas.
Hurricane Dorian is an example of our new normal. The Bahamas, along with our brothers and sisters in the region, are sitting ducks every hurricane season as we pray our island will be spared.
Ferreira says the declaration requires a commitment to mobilizing resources and prioritizing policy as it relates to the mitigation and adaptation of climate change. He says the next step is to address climate change in the House of Assembly, as he estimates Dorian's price tag is in the billions of dollars.
The next step, the immediate next step, is for our Prime Minister to make a subsequent declaration. And then, of course, I will approach the Speaker of the House of Assembly to do the same. But those are sort of like the first immediate steps. And then thereafter, we look at long-term adaptation. We look at the ability for us to raise awareness around the world and to attract funding to help us as we rebuild our country.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Of the 52 bodies recovered since Hurricane Dorian, authorities say 39 of the storm victims are from Abaco. Of that number, 2 of them are children, a little boy and a little girl. Today, officials gave a breakdown of the areas where those bodies were found. They say 3 Abaco storm victims died in Nassau after being airlifted. 4 died in Marsh Harbor. Only 3 bodies have been recovered from the mud shantytown. 1 body was recovered in Central Pine, 1 in Red Bay. 4 bodies were found in Murphytown. 3 bodies were pulled from the Seventh-day Church, 1 on Don McKay Boulevard. 1 body was recovered in Treasure Key, 2 on Bay Street, and it's unclear where 16 of those bodies were found. Meanwhile, Attorney General Carl Bethel says a leaked version of the draft legislation that would pave the way for mandatory evacuations will be amended before it is presented in Parliament next month. Bethel sought to explain what it means to arrest someone if they refuse to leave a vulnerable area once a mandatory evacuation order is issued. Kyle Joaquin reports.
Bethel said there's a lot to dissect with this new draft legislation, but he said what's most important is that government is just really trying to save lives.
For the purpose of taking you to a shelter, yes. Yes, it's not an arrest for the purpose of incarceration. It is a temporary loss of your freedom of movement to save your life.
The Nassau Guardian got a hold of a copy of that proposed bill, which states that where an evacuation is in effect and residents within the specified area or island have not evacuated, a peace officer may take them into custody for the purpose of delivering them to a shelter. It proposes that evacuation orders be announced via television or wireless transmissions by the Prime Minister or Commissioner of Police, as well as in notices outside of magistrates' courts, police stations, and local government administrators' offices. It's recommended that the order expire on the 13th day from being issued. But according to Bethel, someone on the FNM's parliamentary team leaked the draft bill.
Members of Parliament, and particularly the House of Assembly, fully deserve to be fully consulted about such an important piece of legislation in current circumstances. And so the bill was circulated to all members of Parliament, one of whom decided to share it.
The bill also stipulates that no first responder shall have a duty to risk his life to rescue or recover any person in the specified area or island if it could be reasonably expected that such first responder will lose his life or suffer bodily harm to effect such rescue or recovery. But according to Bethel, though the bill was leaked, it will look slightly different by the time it reaches Parliament.
The amendment as it is today has been leaked, but the amendment that will be presented to Parliament will have more extensive provisions. Among them will be those that are designed to bring legal structure and focus and accountability to the whole process of hurricane restoration and reconstruction.
Former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham recently questioned how a bill enabling mandatory evacuations would work.
When we had the hurricanes that came up in the south, we successfully evacuated most of the southern islands of the Bahamas, and people went voluntarily. But it's never been tried as a matter of law. We're going to try as a matter of law.
According to Bethel, the issue of mandatory evacuation is something the Constitutional Commission grappled with as well, but wasn't able to bring it to the people. So he said his next best bet was to make the amendment to the Disaster Preparedness Act and remove the word emergency.
And so we had to go back through an exercise in crafting this bill of disentangling it from the Constitution. And I finally settled on the best way to do that is to remove the word emergency and speak to a local disaster or pending disaster.
Now, as for how soon that bill will be presented to Parliament, Bethel says as soon as they resume on October 2nd.
Yes, and debated and passed on the 3rd of October.
For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Though hundreds of Abaco residents chose to evacuate after the deadly storm, others stayed behind to begin cleanup and rebuilding efforts. Dozens of them lined up in the early morning hours to purchase fuel, which has become a precious commodity. Jerome Sawyer takes a look.
Progress and hope are sprinkled around the island. Roads are being cleared, debris piled up, and some storefronts are being cleaned, possibly in anticipation of reopening. But the overall picture is still grim. There is destruction everywhere. As far as the eye can see, everywhere, a twisted mass of concrete, steel, roofing, shattered glass, broken windows and doors, and destroyed vehicles. And the more recognizable landmarks and familiar sights are just relics of their former glory. At the Rubis gas station on the main Marsh Harbor Road, the first supply of fuel arrived just prior to our visit. Police were on the scene, keeping order, as desperate residents lined up for what has become a very precious commodity.
So what I before, I don't want the main road, I don't want the main road to be blocked up. Right before that, everyone come from the side corner, drive the vehicles from the side corner, and then you'll be able to exit this corner here. Okay, we start the process now. Okay?
Been waiting to get gas.
10 o'clock this morning.
10 this morning? Wow.
But I ain't worrying, but I'm happy, man. I can be here all day if I have to.
You get that gas?
Yes, sir. Gas.
This is the first gas station in this area to open?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what have you been doing since the storm to get gas?
Laying in my jacuzzi.
Your jacuzzi?
Yeah, man. I only had to come on my jacuzzi to get up here.
All right, you making the best of it then?
Yeah, man. Got to make the best of it. All the liquor stores gone, so
What could you do? Oh, I have rum. You need rum? Yeah, man. I got that. What kind of rum you need? What's me, man? I got that. All kind of Jack Daniels.
How long you been waiting on gas?
Well, I've been waiting on gas. No, only a couple of minutes. Only 5 minutes, yeah.
This is the first gas station that's open?
First one ever open.
All right, so what you been doing in the meantime?
Well, I do run to Sandy Point and fill up my 55-gallon drums and bring it to Marshall, but we should no problem.
So what have you all been doing before now?
Sandy Point, riding all the way to Sandy Point looking for gas. Yeah, shipping gas on the boat.
What would you say are the most immediate needs you have on the island right now? Obviously gas is one. What else you need right now?
Gas and water. Water too. So hopefully they'll have the water up soon.
I've been here a little after lunch. There's a gentleman right there. He was here from 7 o'clock this morning.
That's the guy who's in the front?
Yes.
So you all heard that this station had some gas?
Yes, we heard and we came to try to get full up because where I'm from north and there's no fuel down there. So we had to come up here.
Well, what you been doing since this?
Well, since then they had fuel trucks been coming down. But since the past few days, there haven't been none. I don't know what's the reason, but so I had to do what I had to do, come up here along with my pastor and come up here and see if we could get fuel.
We forged ahead. A group of Jamaican military officers were cleaning around the Seventh-day Adventist Church inside a wrecked sanctuary. The damage demonstrative of the sheer force this storm unleashed on this house of worship. Even now, the search continues for whatever is salvageable.
Thanks, Jerome. Meanwhile, the Environment and Housing Minister says government does not have the funds needed to remove 1.5 billion pounds of debris left in Abaco in the wake of Dorian.
The public treasury simply doesn't have enough money to pay for the debris, which is why we're so happy and grateful that we have international partners out there who have come to our aid in this regard. It's the same way with building the capital infrastructure. We're going to need assistance for that. And that's why this declaration today puts us in a better position as we lead the charge to get responsible parties out there to assist us as we rebuild our country. The rebuilding process is going to take time.
On Tuesday, Ferreira said government is tasked with removing that debris in Marsh Harbor in the aftermath of the storm.
Debris removal has already begun. So notwithstanding the tens of millions of dollars, there are volunteer agencies here on the ground. There are private citizens on the ground that have begun the debris removal, certainly from their homes and their premises. Another facet of debris removal will have to be the insurance adjusters, particularly for those homes and businesses that were insured. They would go through that process, and the larger scale debris would take a little bit more time.
Still to come, Atlantis and JetBlue team up for storm relief efforts. Plus, a local law firm offers a free legal clinic for storm survivors. Stay tuned.